Okay, so can someone tell me why I've just spent the past 3.5 months standing up for a bunch of buffoons? Because on the surface, when you look at these documents that have been released to the media, based on what is said in the various articles, it sounds like the only possible thing that's left in terms of what happened to Jack and Lily is alien abduction. They didn't wander off into the woods. They weren't abducted. Or at least, not by anybody in a vehicle, apparently. And it's not a criminal investigation. Allegedly. Doesn't really leave many options. Although, there are some things that I need to point out. And I think by the end of this video, hopefully, people will have found a little bit of clarification. So I've spent this morning working through the articles from the three main media sources that have put them out, because each one of them put out different information. So what I did is I combined it all into one single document. It's all essentially plagiarised. I have not rewritten any of it. I've just taken each paragraph and inserted it into a spot. Because if I were to sit down and actually turn it into my own document, then you'd probably never get this video. It would take eternity. So it's basically excerpts from three separate articles put together into one document, which hopefully covers everything that's been discussed in these three articles. Now, I am going to put this document into Patreon for anyone who wants a copy of it. So essentially my Patreon is free to join, and basically any documents that are in there are free to download. There are a few tiers. If you wanted to support my channel financially, I've kept them to a minimum. They're meant to be $1 and $2 tiers, but this morning when I was in there getting some stuff from Plunder True Crime, I noticed that my pricing has now been changed to $2 and $3.50. I will see if I can alter that back down to the $1 and $2 tiers. If I can't, then I guess the cheapest tier is $2. That is Australian, so presumably if you are American, it's going to be cheaper for you. Now, I do have one request with regards to that, and that is I work really hard here on my channel preparing things like these documents, preparing videos where I do comparisons and stuff like that. So if you are going to use my work, please give me credit for it. I know that there are those who do, but I also see the ones who don't. And I am just getting a little bit tired of putting hours and hours of preparation into something and then see someone basically putting up my work as their own. I do want to give a shout out to the channel AB Balance, because anytime he uses anything that I've come up with, he gives me credit. And I'm so grateful for that. And I would just like to see others follow that example. Now, if you're not sure of what I'm talking about with these documents, basically three of the bigger newspaper channels, media channels, have done a submission in court where they tried to get hold of documents from the RCMP regarding Jack and Lily's case. The RCMP released 7 documents, which these 3 newspaper places have reported on. Like I said, they've all reported differently. I would love to be able to get hold of the documents and read them for myself, because I think when you see each of these columnists basically missing out vast amounts of information, and you have to work to pull it all together, then I wonder what else is in those documents that is being completely overlooked. I also know from past experience that people can misinterpret information and present it in the wrong way if they are not presenting it verbatim. Now, before I start discussing the information that we've got from these various articles, I do want to give you an update with regards to what Belinda Gray is currently up to. She went on the channel It's a Criming Shame and gave this update. So I'm just going to play a short clip and then do a brief discussion on it. I think what I will probably do is then come out and do a longer video discussing it, because I think there's a few issues here that need to be looked at. On the surface, it sounds brilliant, but when you start to really break it down, you realise that it may not be huge progress.
Okay, I have sought legal counsel, and I have decided that I am going to apply for temporary legal guardianship of Lily and Jack. My lawyer has advised me that anyone can apply, and I've retained a lawyer to apply for guardianship. Once Malaya is served the documents, she can reply, and then it goes to court. At courts, through my lawyer, I will subpoena Malaya and Daniel to the stand to testify, and if they happen to choose to ignore a summons to appear in court, it can be held against them. Once at court, I'll get to ask the questions I need answered, like where are the children? Was anybody hurting them? And why didn't they just get a hold of me if they just needed a break? Or why wouldn't she have reached out to me? Because I would have gladly have taken them for visits to give her a break. Becoming Jack and Lily's guardian will allow me to advocate for them and will bring answers as to what has happened. No matter if the children are alive or deceased, I will be the guardian who will love and protect them. These actions will help me to understand what has happened and whether the children are alive or not. They will have a guardian who will look out for them either way. I would also add that court rules state the default is to hold this trial open to the public, so hopefully the answers are given. So there is where I stand right now. And I contacted the RCMP the day before yesterday to give them a heads up of what I was doing. And I do find it kind of odd that the following day, they contact the news for releasing certain documentations, and today those documentations are released. I've had a chance to lightly go over them and see what's been posted out, and there's a couple of things that make me wonder just what's what. They stated in the beginning that there was no abduction. They do not believe there's any abduction, but yet the papers that are released today state that someone has spotted the kids walking on the road towards a gold color sedan. If that was the case and if it was taken seriously, wouldn't that have required an Amber Alert? All the statements that Daniel and even Malaya herself have put out and all the stories that they have told, but yet the court papers that it shows to the police, they were a very happy, caring couple who did well for each other and for the children. So, like you, Sonny, I'm in a pretzel mode, and I really don't know where it leads. And I'm hoping by applying for guardianship, it would allow me to have further access as to what is going on in this case.
This is a good thing that Belinda is doing. I'm certainly not saying it isn't. And on the surface, it looks like it could, make a huge difference in terms of the case. But there's a few things that concern me with this. Now, thankfully, the lawyer is pro bono, so she's not paying for this, because there's going to be limitations in terms of what's going on here. I like the idea of applying for temporary legal guardianship. However, given the statements that we've heard from Daniel and Malaya, I suspect that getting them in court is not going to get truthful answers from them, any more than the RCMP managed to get truthful answers from them. You can bet you won't get truthful answers from Malaya because she's got a lawyer, and her lawyer is going to advise her that anything that you say under this subpoena could actually be accessed by the RCMP under the Missing Persons Act and used against you. And I'd imagine that Daniel can probably figure that out for himself too. So on that side of things, I really wouldn't be holding my breath about getting answers from either of them when it comes to what happened to Lily and Jack. Now, the other concern I have is hearing Belinda make that statement that, it'll be a chance for her to understand what happened to them, whether the children are alive or deceased. And it concerns me that based on all the information we have, it looks like there is only a very slim chance of those children being still alive. My opinion is that they are most likely not still alive. And I'm just concerned that people have been giving Belinda false hope, and that following this course of action, I hope she is still going into it eyes wide open, recognising that in all likelihood these children are deceased. Now, the plus side for Belinda is that if she does get temporary legal guardianship, then the RCMP have to keep her updated to some extent with regards to the case. Legally, they have to give her whatever updates they can that aren't going to compromise the investigation. The thing is, I suspect that at this point in time, there's not a lot that they can give without compromising their investigation. So it's possible that they may be very, very tight-lipped, even if she's got temporary guardianship. I hope that there are positives that come of this. I hope that she does get temporary guardianship. But I hope that she's also going into this with eyes wide open and realising that it may not be the big fix that she's hoping. Anyway, there's a lot to unpack in this document that I've put together, so let's just jump straight in. I will just say I believe that the three media outlets were the Globe and Mail, the Canadian Press, and CBC. Although now I've said that, I'm thinking I may have that slightly wrong and have missed one. Feel free to correct me down below. Police investigating the disappearance of Jack and Lily Sullivan collected the kids' toothbrushes from their home, found a sock and a scrap of purple fabric in the woods, according to court documents that also detail the results of their mother and stepfather's polygraph tests. Okay, I just want to say that it bugs me that 3.5 months in, people are still referring to him as a stepfather. Because, honestly, that guy really didn't give two hoots for these kids. And him and Malaya aren't even together anymore. It's just my little thing. I know people would disagree with me, but that's just the way I see it. 7 court documents filed by police in their continuing major crime investigation and obtained by the Globe and Mail on Thursday divulged the items seized during the search for the young kids from Lansdowne, Nova Scotia. A lack of evidence pointing to potential criminality at the time of the documents were filed in mid-May, and a play-by-play account of the children's last hours before their mother reported them missing. I just need to point out here that these documents are from really early on in the investigation. And while these media outlets are claiming, oh look, it's not a criminal investigation after all, this is mid-May. We got far more information in June and July that made it pretty damn clear that they are treating it now as a criminal investigation. So I just want to point that out, and I will clarify that a little bit more further into this document. The documents, sealed by a provincial court judge in Pictou at the request of the RCMP in mid-May, were re-released to the Globe and other media outlets with some redactions, the reasons for which include personal information, privileged information, and delayed disclosure. Okay, so as much as I think that the RCMP are complete utter fools, when I read delayed disclosure, that makes me think that there is some critical information in those documents that may actually be important and may actually be leading towards a resolution for this case. Maybe I'm delusional. Could be the case, because honestly, I am fast losing faith in the RCMP. They show the Mounties made 6 applications under the Missing Persons Act to access copies of records that contained information about Jack and Lily. Now, just bear in mind, when you hear them say 6 applications, that they would have to do separate applications for each child. So in terms of child protection, they would have had to do one for Jack and one for Lily. So you're pretty much only looking at 3 separate organisations here. I'm going to guess that you have child protection and probably the education department, whatever you call it there in Canada. As for the third one, possibly medical records. So as you can see, I put everything into subheadings just to make it easier to put the information all together. Children reported missing. Lily Sullivan 6 and Jack Sullivan 4 were reported missing on the morning of May 2nd when police received a 911 call at 10:01 a.m. So that gives you that. It was in all the dispatch audio anyway, but now we have it there. From their mother Malaya Brooks Murray, saying they had wandered away from the home in Lansdowne Station, about 140 kilometres north-east of Halifax. RCMP arrived 26 minutes later at 10:27. So my calculations were off a little bit in terms of when the RCMP arrived. I had them arriving at 10:34 based on the dispatch audio, but they're saying 10:27. This also proves that some of the information put out in Janie's audio is misleading and incorrect. Their mysterious disappearance sparked an extensive grid search that spanned 8.5 square kilometres of mostly dense woods around the home and included wells, mine shafts and waterways. And I believe they said that there are still mine shafts that they need to go back and check out. The case has gripped people across Canada and around the world, prompting 740 tips to police and more than 9,300 videos, which RCMP said are being evaluated and prioritised by major crime investigations. Note again, you have these being evaluated and prioritised by major crime investigations. When you look at the updates that have occurred since mid-May, you can see that it actually has switched to a criminal investigation. The biggest clue, of course, being the $150,000 reward, because that reward is basically a reward for solving a crime. Those rewards are offered for criminal investigations. They're not missing person rewards. They are specifically for criminal investigations. I've just made a note for myself, and when I upload this video, I will include a link in the description for this video, or links to the videos that I've done where I actually discuss the fact that this is now a criminal investigation. That said, there are still many things that are being claimed as being in these documents that concern me and make me worry a lot that this could end up being a cold case. Okay, so let's talk about this gold car that has been mentioned. The documents say police had received hundreds of tips in the case, including one from a witness who said she was travelling with her sons on the morning of May 2nd and saw two children walking along the side of the road. Natasha Haywood informed the RCMP on May 31st. She described seeing a young girl holding a young boy's hand. The boy had dirty blonde hair and was wearing shorts, while the girl had darkish hair in pigtails and was wearing a tank top with blue strings. According to police, she said the children were walking towards a Caucasian female of about 50 to 60 years old, with a loose curl haircut, who was waiting next to the passenger side of an older model tan or gold sedan with the back door open. Now, first of all, if you've followed other cases, you will know that quite often when it comes to freedom of information requests, that you get these tips being released as part of the FOIA that actually have nothing to do with the case. If you read through the various documents in the Maddie Soto case, there's a number of tips that are mentioned that actually don't connect to the case. So just because it's included in a document dump doesn't give it any sort of value. And looking at this is definitely not Jack and Lily. We have the boy being described as wearing shorts. We know that's not what Jack was wearing. And the girl, darkish hair in pigtails. When have we ever seen photos of Lily with her hair in pigtails? And if these kids got themselves up of a morning and wandered off on their own, do you really think Lily would be capable of putting her hair in pigtails, given that we've never seen any photos of her like that? Not only that, we have a description of her clothes, wearing a tank top with blue strings. Not the description of what Lily was wearing. And when we get further down, we will see that she actually estimates them as being older. Now, I know that there's going to be people that latch onto this and say, look, see, even the RCMP are saying that there's possibly a reduction. And for those people, I'm not even going to try and argue the point, because obviously there is a bit of confirmation bias, or a lot of confirmation bias going on there. And honestly, if you believe that sighting was Jack and Lily, there's nothing that I'm going to be able to say to convince you otherwise. The documents say that in early June, police met with the witness near the corner of Gairloch Road and Lansdowne Station Road, where she mentioned having seen the children walking north towards Westville, Nova Scotia, and that the vehicle appeared to be waiting for them. When she later met with police, Haywood said she thought the girl was around 9 or 10 years old and the boy 5 years old, the documents say. And when we look at Lily and Jack, you would expect people to underestimate their ages, not overestimate their ages. Investigators are working to find out if the children were indeed Jack and Lily, the document noted. Oh my gosh, there really are imbeciles working for the RCMP. Right, statements. In a statement to CBC News this week, RCMP spokesperson Alison Gerard said the disappearance remains a very active investigation. The Nova Scotia RCMP is using every available resource to help locate Lily and Jack and determine the circumstances of their disappearance, she said. You could have fooled me. Honestly, I don't think they know what they're doing. However, Corporal Curl notes that in a May 23rd affidavit that the case may progress to being criminal should the elements of a criminal offence be identified. And like I said, clearly they were, because then we have this $150,000 reward that's suddenly on offer, which is basically offered in criminal investigations. The RCMP Nova Northeast Major Crime Unit continues to lead a very active, intensive investigation with assistance from the agencies across Canada, said RCMP spokesperson Cindy Bayers in an email in response to questions on Friday. She said police have not ruled out any scenario or confirmed the circumstances of the children's disappearance, which continues to be investigated under the Missing Persons Act. She reiterated there is no evidence that the children were abducted, but every possibility is being considered. In other words, they honestly do sound clueless. Investigators have and continue to receive forensic results, which they're assessing, wrote Ms. Bayers. She declined to disclose specific results due to the continuing investigation. I'm completely open and transparent with everything on the case. They know my life inside out, and I was happy to share it with them, Martel said this week, in reaction to the release of court records. It's important for me because Jack and Lily were my stepkids, and there's 2 innocent children that are missing. Okay, first of all, just a few things I want to point out here. The use of past tense there, they were my stepkids. Could be that he's just saying, well, I'm not with Malaya anymore, so they're not my stepkids anymore. But this is not the first time he's used past tense with these children. The other thing that is a huge red flag here is his reference to them as innocent children. That is out of place, given the context. I would expect to hear reference to innocent children when there has been a crime or an accident or something like that that's been covered up. Children just going missing, then you tend not to refer to them as innocent children. Because when you refer to them as innocent children, you are implying something almost evil has occurred with these children. When they've just gone missing, you don't know. Generally, people have hope if the children have just wandered off that they're going to be found. So referring to them as innocent children suggests that somebody was responsible for what happened to those children. So now we have digital devices, GPS and bank records. You will note that in some instances the flow of the writing here is a little off because I have copied and pasted paragraphs. One was for the cell phone records of both Malaya Brooks Murray, the child's mother, and Daniel Martel, the stepfather. In the early weeks of the investigation, RCMP sought access to all electronic devices and data used by Brooks Murray and her then boyfriend Daniel Martel during the period between May 1st at 2:25 p.m. and May 2nd at 10:27 a.m. when police arrived. You're kidding me, right? They only went up to 10:27 a.m. We know Daniel was absent the entire day on May the 2nd. And if they are presuming that once a child is reported missing, that it's all done and dusted and the cover-up doesn't continue, they're morons. Complete and utter morons. You had Janie, Justin, Daniel, and quite possibly Daniel's uncle all faffing around up on that pipeline on the day that the kids were reported missing. You have Janie refusing them entry to her RV on the first day. They had to come back later with a search warrant. So why the heck would you have a cut-off of 10:27, the time when Mounties arrived at the property? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it Letitia Stausch who had Gannon in the boot of her car when police attended after he was reported missing? Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong case, but I'm pretty certain it was Letitia Stausch. You have Stephen Stearns doing a late-night visit to his parents' place the night before he was arrested, logging into his Google account at their IP address. This was after Maddie was reported missing. And yet the RCMP, geniuses that they are, have only put in an application for access to electronic devices and data up to the point when they turned up on the property. I think I'm starting to see why we are not seeing any progress in this case. Location data from various sources, including global positioning systems, cell phone tower locations, and file metadata, can tell investigators the historical location of the device. Only up until 10:27 a.m, the day the kids went missing though. Seriously. Said RCMP member Corporal Charlene Curl in her written request to the court. Was she like a trainee? Honestly. Logs such as call logs, chat logs, email logs will show investigators who Malaya and Daniel were in contact with prior to Jack and Lily going missing and verify the information they have provided to police. I wonder if they even bothered to download Janie's phone. Officers also accessed their bank records using their transaction histories to cross-reference timelines previously provided to the police by Martel and Brooks Murray. RCMP also accessed Brooks Murray's Text Plus account, a phone app that she used for Wi-Fi calling. By the time police sought the records in early July, the court records said Brooks Murray had deleted the app because she doesn't need it anymore. Regardless, RCMP were able to access her account. Okay, well, these guys are complete amateur fools. They waited 2 months to actually access records on Malaya's phone. It should be standard protocol. And I said this in the Maddie Soto case as well. It should be standard protocol. It should actually be something that is law. That when a child is missing, it should be protocol for officers to take the phones of the guardians of that child or those children and download those phones immediately. I mean, the Maddie Soto case is a classic example. By the time they took Stearns' phone, he had factory reset that phone twice. But honestly, they scaled back the search in this case 6 days in, meaning that they had already decided after 6 days that those kids probably were not in the woods. Most likely were not in the woods. So why did it take them 2 months to then have a look at the phones of the 2 people who were there when the children went missing? You know, when this case first broke, I did express my concerns that this was going to be another Summerwells case, and that 3 years, 4 years down the track, we would be looking at it and going, where are Jack and Lily? Why are there no arrests? Why is nothing happening? But then I looked at the number of times that Daniel Martel was coming out and speaking to the media and changing his story and slipping up and giving himself away, and all the red flags, and I thought, no, this case is going to be a done deal. They're not as savvy as Don and Candace Wells, who seem to have completely hoodwinked investigators. But honestly, it just seems like there's a bunch of amateurs investigating this case. Okay, so video surveillance and sightings. A second was for school bus video surveillance around the children's home. In other words, there is a camera on the school bus, and whatever time the school bus goes through in the morning, there would be footage of that road, which, to be honest, I think is going to be utterly useless. But anyway, other applications were to request copies of records under the control of companies, the names of which were redacted. The documents say the information is requested because the last time Jack and Lily's location was independently verified was May 1st at 2:25 p.m. at their local Dollarama via video surveillance. So obviously, if it's related to the last sighting, then records are going to be, you know, things from the locations that they allegedly went to on that Thursday afternoon. This could assist the investigation by helping police to identify further investigational avenues and leads, and possibly lead to the location of the children, wrote RCMP Corporal Charlene Curl in a partially unsealed affidavit. Polygraph tests. She also laid out information gathered by more than 20 police officers up until mid-May. Both Malaya and Daniel's polygraph examination results on May 12th showed that they were truthful when answering 4 questions that were redacted as privileged information. I'll come back to that. Malaya willingly agreed to undergo a polygraph examination in relation to this investigation in an effort to eliminate her as a suspect in causing her children's disappearance and possible murder, said the documents, referring to statements made by Sergeant Chris Dorr, who conducted her polygraph test. Martel has told CBC he asked RCMP to do a polygraph test. He said all of the questions were focused on whether he killed Lily and Jack.
Especially with the first question they asked you, did you kill Lily and Jack?
That was the first question they asked you?
Yeah. Yeah.
What went through your mind when someone's asking you that question so point blank like that?
Your mind has a massive release of chemicals, I guess you would call them. It's like your stress levels just astronomically through the roof, and your body doesn't know what to do, because it's not every day the way you're hooked up to machines in an interrogation room where someone asks you questions like that.
What other kinds of questions did they ask you?
All the questions pertain to the death of Lily and Jack. Are you accessory to the murder of Lily and Jack? They were all.
So all of the questions assumed that the children are no longer alive?
Yeah.
There were no questions at all about, did you take them somewhere? Could
No.
they be somewhere?
No.
So very limited questions, and the sort of questions that a person who could still be guilty could answer believing themselves to be truthful if they see it in a different way. I mean, just for one example, let's say there was some sort of accident or there was an issue with someone over-disciplining the children and the children died as a result of over-disciplining. Let's say, hypothetically, all this crap about the sliding door, maybe they decided to lock them out overnight because they were sick of them leaving the door open and wanted to teach them a lesson, and the children ended up getting hypothermia and passing away overnight. Then yes, you could turn around and say, no, I did not kill the children. I had nothing to do with the deaths of the children. I was not a co-conspirator. Likewise, if there was some horrible accident that occurred out on that driveway, then yes, he could say, no, I did not kill those children. Because in his eyes, that's not what happened. Note, he has this smirk when he's talking about the polygraph test. And here's where I have to disagree with the behaviour panel. They were like, oh, you know, listen to him describing the physical reactions when you're doing the polygraph test. He's just, you know, he's a boy nerding out over the process and how it all works. To me, particularly given the look on his face, when he's describing what happens when you are asked these questions, he sounded to me like he'd been reading up on the polygraph test so that he knew, or thought he knew, how he could beat it. Now, this is a guy who masks. When he talks, you see virtually no expression on his face. No clues to what he is thinking when he's talking. Someone like that can easily beat a polygraph test. So it concerns me that they're basically carrying on about, yep, you know, doesn't give us any cause to believe there was a criminal act, because it seems like they were truthful. There are several things that affect the efficiency of polygraph tests, which is why they are not admissible in court. First of all, the skill of the person administering the test. I've heard of some agents who are so good that they have like a 98% test success rate, and then you hear of others that are just pretty damn dismal. And I can't help thinking that this is what we're looking at here. Another factor, like I said, is you get people who are sociopaths and who can beat the test. And if the person administering the test is unable to recognise these sorts of things, then you're screwed. And it seems like whoever administered this test didn't notice any of this with Daniel. Also, if you have limited scope in terms of questions, if you make up your mind during the interview that this is the tack you're going to take, and so you only cover that angle, then yes, they may pass the polygraph test because you haven't asked the right questions. And of course, then there is also the effects of illicit drugs. I've heard people talk about Daniel liking a bit of Mary Jane. And that's one thing that can help you pass a polygraph test. Because basically you're pretty damn relaxed. So if they administered a polygraph test to him without also doing a urine test to check for drugs, then shame on them. We've seen how frequently Daniel has changed his story, how often he's lied. So I really don't put any weight whatsoever into these polygraph tests. An investigator's comment is included in the document, stating, "I do not have reasonable grounds to believe a criminal offence has occurred. Because Jack and Lily are still missing, polygraph examinations were conducted with the intention of ruling out that possibility." Well, dude, sorry, but Sergeant Chris Dorr, you might want to go and do some training, or some more training, and learn how to administer polygraph tests properly. The documents also show Janie Mackenzie, Martel's mother, did a polygraph test on June 10th. Her physiology was not suitable for analysis, and no opinion was rendered. I know this is going to be a hot topic, so let me clarify things for you a little bit. There are multiple reasons why polygraph tests fail with some individuals. And let's have a look at Janie in particular. She has said she is a smoker. She gets up of a morning and she has a cigarette and then she goes and lets her chickens out or feeds her chickens or whatever. Meaning that she could well have respiratory issues. In which case, that is going to be a problem for administering the polygraph. Because amongst the many things that are assessed is breathing rate. Also, being an older person, if there is any sign of cardiovascular disease, then that can also have an impact because heart rate is measured. Hypertension, anxiety, medications, including some antidepressants, and even menopause. Blood pressure can impact. So Janie is an older person. If you saw one of my recent videos, I commented that she showed signs of significant anxiety. And she herself admits to having issues with anxiety. She hasn't discussed medication, it's none of our business. But if she is on antidepressants, that's also going to mean that a polygraph test is going to be an epic fail. If she has hypertension with all that anger that she carries, then that's also going to basically render a polygraph test useless. So there's so many reasons why she was probably not suitable. On June 12th, Lily Sullivan, the children's biological father, also did a polygraph and was determined to be truthful. Cindy Brooks Murray, the children's maternal grandmother, and her boyfriend Wade Paris both passed polygraph tests on July 2nd. Some details of the 6 polygraph tests, including questions asked and officers' notes, are redacted in the documents. An investigator's comment says at this point in the investigation, Jack and Lily's disappearance is not believed to be criminal in nature. I do not have reasonable grounds to believe a criminal offence has occurred. Note he says, I do not have reasonable grounds. He's not saying he's not ruling it out completely. He's just saying doesn't have reasonable grounds. But like I said, I'm not convinced that this dude doing the polygraph test really is one of the best in the field. Because Jack and Lily are still missing, polygraph examinations were conducted with the intention of ruling out that possibility. I think I had that in a previous paragraph. Honestly, I hope that they are not basing their investigation on the results of these polygraph tests. Because if they are, then I can assure you this is going to be a cold case within 6 months. Because Blind Freddy can see that there are 3 people in this case who need to be looked at really closely and who are definitely involved. And yet they've been cleared by polygraph? Right, let's talk about Lily Sullivan. Among the numerous court orders sought by police was one for Polygraph Pass, a tolled section of highway in Nova Scotia. Specifically, the RCMP were looking for video records, including closed-circuit footage of all cameras of drivers leaving Nova Scotia between May 1st, 2025 at 2:25 p.m. and to May 3rd, 2025 at 3 a.m. Brooks Murray did, however, call RCPM at 12:45 a.m. on May 3rd to report that the children's biological father might have picked them up and taken them to New Brunswick. Why the heck would she consider that, given that Cody had nothing to do with the kids for 3 years? It just seems ridiculous. She stated that she did not have any proof and she just wanted to make sure every possibility is looked into. In other words, deflection. Don't look at us, look elsewhere. RCMP showed up at Sullivan's house at 2:50 a.m. According to the request for Polygraph Pass Toll Plaza videos, police later met with Sullivan on May 22nd. The court documents said he told police he'd been in a relationship with the mother but had not seen her nor the children in 3 years. He said he paid child support, contrary to what Brooks Murray had told police. So I'm curious now, because Belinda said that he wasn't paying support. So I'm wondering if she said that because that's what she was told by Malaya, or if she knows for certain that Cody wasn't paying support. He said he did not know what happened to Jack and Lily, police noted. He was home on May 2nd, 2025 and never goes anywhere. He's not been anywhere other than his house recently and has had no contact with Malaya since the children went missing. On May 7th, RCMP spoke to Sullivan again because a tip said he had been seen by a hotel employee in New Brunswick. Police confirmed once again he was at home in Nova Scotia. Honestly, I swear to God, the moment I start talking is the moment that dog starts snoring. Right, forensics. Police examining blanket, other items found during search for missing Nova Scotia children. The 7th court document shows that police seized the children's toothbrushes, that would be for DNA, from their home, and a blanket from a trash bag at the end of their driveway that matched the piece of Lily's blanket seized by police 1 kilometre from the home in a tree. Police have said Lily's blanket has been sent for forensic testing. Clumps of boot prints in 2 different sizes, including a child's, were found on the pipeline in the area in the first few days of the search, documents said. So that's interesting that it's clumps of boot prints. Remember though, Janie mentioned the day of the fight on the driveway that essentially she'd been ignoring Malaya's call because she was talking to a lady with a child. Now, I personally believe that any boot prints that were found or footprints that were found were in fact planted. But if they weren't, then, it could be anyone's prints up on that pipeline. And, in terms of those boot prints on the pipeline, they examined the area thoroughly when they first found them, and then they went back and did another search, a week or so later. So obviously nothing to be seen there, folks. Other seizures included indent impression castings, typically used to gather casts of boot prints or tyre tracks. That's interesting, because if there were tyre tracks and they did impressions of, very interesting. Scat, which police say could be human or animal. Whoa, gross. And a sock and piece of purple fabric. Let's hope it was animal. Oh my goodness. Now, I don't remember if it was a description or a photo, but the sock was basically for an older child. Around 4 p.m, relatives of Brooks Murray came out of the woods saying they had found a pink blanket down the road from the children's home. The blanket was seized by RCMP and photographs were taken. Now, if their records are accurate, and honestly I have my doubts now, it is interesting that they're saying that it was a relative or relatives of Malaya as opposed to Daniel that came out of the woods saying they'd found a pink blanket down the road from the children's home. According to Janie, Malaya's family didn't search. But then it could also be that maybe Dingbat and his son found that bit of blanket because they are technically relatives of Malaya. So I would be very, very curious to know who it was that actually found that piece of blanket. According to the documents, a police dog walked for about 1 kilometre in the area and did not pick up a scent. Of course not, because it was planted there. Another piece of blanket was seized from a garbage bag in a bin at the end of the family's driveway. Martel tells CBC it was the same blanket but had been ripped apart. Brooks Murray told police it was Lily's lol doll blanket that she had sometimes dragged around with her, but had decided she no longer wanted. Martel had been using it to stop a draft around the door, according to her statement. Malaya took the blanket from the door because the weather was getting nicer about a week before, and she threw it in the garbage, the document said. There was already a piece missing from it when she did that because Daniel ripped it off when he put it up. Can we just acknowledge that it was still fecking freezing overnight at that time of year? So that story is a bit odd. Daniel and Malaya interviews and statements. Martel said he had no idea Brooks Murray called RCMP that first night to report Sullivan might have taken the children. Yeah, I bet. I was so exhausted on the night of May 2nd I went to bed. I still remember that I sat on the bed, I gave Malaya a hug and everything, and then I literally passed out cold because I was so tired from searching all day and I fell asleep at 9:09, he said. And of course he was up all night the night before. You think she would have told me that the next day, but nothing. There is definitely more to the story there. Brooks Murray told police she was awake most of the first night the children were gone. She slept between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Well, she didn't look like she was lacking too much sleep when she did that interview. Days before disappearance. The documents describe in detail how the family spent the days leading up to the disappearance, running errands. On Wednesday, April 30, all 5, including Jack and Lily's baby sister, went to Brooks Murray's grandmother's house to do laundry at 2 p.m. More than an hour later, Brooks Murray took the baby with her to get a licence plate for her car, while Martel stayed at her grandmother's house with Jack and Lily. According to the documents, they went to the Ultramar in Millbrook to get gas, and she stopped to get a vape for Daniel at High Grade. The entire family later went for groceries and eventually arrived back home at 10:19 p.m. On May 1st, Jack and Lily didn't go to school. The entire family went to New Glasgow in the afternoon and were home for the evening. Brooks Murray initially said she put Jack and Lily to bed at 9 p.m, then changed that time to 10 p.m. in a later statement to police. That's something to make note of. According to Brooks Murray, Martel stayed up and she did not know what time he came to bed. She said she heard the kids giggling, laughing and talking to each other in their shared bedroom in the early hours of Friday, May the 2nd. Well, they didn't sound like they were too unwell to go to school then, did they? She was fading in and out of sleep, but when she heard silence, she told Martel, and they started checking inside and outside their home before Brooks Murray called 911. We've heard different versions of that also. The court documents show that Malaya provided multiple statements to police, including a detailed description of May the 1st, the day before the children were reported missing. She kept Jack and Lily home from school because they had coughs. now it's both of them, even though the story we've heard was that it was just Lily. Everyone woke around 9 a.m. and the kids played and watched television while she got them breakfast and tidied the house. Around noon, she, Daniel and their toddler Meadow, Jack and Lily drove to New Glasgow in Malaya's 2017 white Nissan Pathfinder. They stopped for gas, possibly went to Tim Hortons and went to a Starbucks drive-through. Possibly went to Tim Hortons, can't they remember? Malaya said they visited Dollarama and purchased items using Daniel's bank card before going to a pharmacy. Daniel also said they stopped at Acropole Pub and Grill to pick up some poutine. That night, Malaya told police she fed Jack and Lily supper, after which the kids watched television and possibly went outside to play. Possibly. It doesn't fit with Janie's story, does it? She brushed their teeth and got them ready for bed at 9 p.m, 2 hours later than usual. Well, yeah, that doesn't match, does it, with the 10 p.m? They wore the same clothes to bed they'd worn during the day. Lily in a pink sweater, pink pyjamas and white shapes. They went to town with her in pink pyjamas. Okay. A Barbie top and pink socks. Jack in black sweatpants, a t-shirt and diaper. Malaya told police she'd been too tired to unpack the clean laundry she'd done at her grandmother's the previous night. She had all that fecking morning on the Thursday to unpack the clean laundry. Presumably Daniel was home too. Why couldn't he help? Seriously. The children were tucked into bed around 10 p.m. Jack with his blanket and dinosaur, Lily with her cream corduroy backpack and strawberries on it. She shut the children's bedroom door, and then she and Meadow went to bed. When you look at these statements, it looks like they could already have been turning on each other quite early on. Daniel stayed up late, she told police. She was not woken up throughout the night and did not know when Daniel came to bed. On May 2nd, around 6:15 a.m, Malaya marked the children absent from school due to illness, even though they were, giggling and playing in the room next door. According to the documents, Lily was last seen by her mother and stepfather when she came into their bedroom that morning. Jack had not been seen since the night before, though both parents told police they heard him playing. Yet their stories have changed here as well. Malaya said she heard the kids laughing in the next bedroom. It woke up Meadow, who was sleeping in a crib in Malaya's bedroom. Malaya brought her into bed and turned the TV on before fading in and out of sleep. Yeah, that excuse works, right? Sometime between 8 a.m. and 9:40 a.m, the children left the house. Malaya told police according to the documents. In her fifth statement to police, provided May 9th, Malaya said Daniel opened the front door to go looking for the kids. He put a wrench on top of the door the night before and it didn't fall down, so Daniel said they must have gone out the back sliding door, said the documents. Daniel confirmed this, saying he does that most nights because a bear used to hang around outside. So you have two young children, you have a bear that used to hang around outside, and apparently you don't lock the doors at night or put something in the runner to stop the children opening the door? Right. Daniel told police he and Malaya got up and looked for the kids. When he couldn't see them in the yard, he got in the car and drove around, then ran around in the woods searching for hours. We've heard that story. He told police that while searching the woods, he thought he heard a scream that sounded like Jack and Lily. But when he stopped to listen, a helicopter overhead drowned out all other sounds. Note that the scream sounded like the pair of them. Didn't sound like Jack, or it didn't sound like Lily, but it sounded like Jack and Lily, which to me says utter BS, and that he just made that up. I don't know, we've got boot prints found up on the pipeline, screams that are apparently heard. I wonder if he actually followed the Summerwells case. Anyway, let's go back. His mother, Janie Mackenzie, who lives in a camper on the property, provided 2 statements to police. She dozed off around 8:50 a.m. and awoke to the sound of her dog barking. She told police she heard Jack and Lily playing on the swings and laughing in the backyard before she dozed off again. Note how in her statement to police, Janie claims that she heard them laughing in the backyard. Not yelling, not screaming, but laughing. Honestly, the woman is a chameleon. She awoke to Daniel yelling for the children, got her coat and boots on and walked around looking for them. Yes, we've heard that, haven't we? Since the Sullivan children disappeared 3.5 months ago, their mother has avoided making public statements. The newly released documents provide summaries of 5 statements Brooks Murray provided to the RCMP. In her first police interview, she described Martel as an involved parent who would help her, especially when she was overwhelmed. She said he wasn't aggressive with the children, but he had a voice they would listen to. Well, we've heard otherwise for that too. Brooks Murray told RCMP there was never any physical discipline. In other sections where police summarised her account of their relationship, the document is heavily redacted. The pair haven't spoken since May the 3rd. Okay, it seems like I didn't finish editing because the rest of that document is basically repetition, so I don't need to read through that. So that brings us to the end. So that is the 3 different articles put together. I think I've covered everything. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that I missed out of the 3 documents, and I will add it into the document before. Well, I will upload it now to Patreon, but if I've missed anything, I'll fix the document and then I'll re-upload it. So on that note, thanks for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit that like button and please leave a comment below because YouTube loves it when you do that. Makes them recommend my videos to more people. So on that note, thank you, and I will catch you in the next one.